Hello, hello.
Hello?
Hello.
Is everyone here?
I think so.
Let me know if the in-game music is too loud.
Oh,
Is it good, or should I? Is it too loud?
Yeah, you should probably turn that music down.
There we
That's
go.
a bit much.
Yeah. All right, there we go. All right.
yo. Where's Bat?
Let's see. We're just missing one person. Let's
What world are you in, Super? I'm gonna come stand next to you.
see.
Yeah.
So, all right. Hello,
Oh,
hello.
who's this?
Everyone here.
Hey.
Hello.
Yo.
We did it.
Yay.
So hi. So this is our first podcast. So we're just gonna talk about the thing we have done in the past couple months after the climb being approved, and we're also gonna talk about what will be our goal or for the near future and long term as well. And we'll also try answering some questions that were posted yesterday, and we can go ahead and just start talking about what have been going on for the past month ever since you got approved. So we can go ahead and start with a Pat or Brain.
Let's see. Yeah, we got approved. Feels good. Took us, how long did it take us?
Year and a half or something.
Year and a half. Like, we've been in development for how long? I think.
Version 63, I think, was our first alpha phase. Like,
Yeah.
if that's when you count the start,
Mm-hmm.
it's been quite some time. Over a year and a half, I think. Good luck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we started this with me, you, and Super, and then we just, after like countless crashes, we finally got like somewhat stable proof of concept going. And we're like, yeah.
That was some fun times. Like, just every time it crashed, like it lasted a little bit longer.
Exactly. Like Super was like right clicking and crashing. It was so unstable.
Like, yeah. So actually, it was 2020. Yeah, August of 2020 was when we released, or when we started actually making changes to the changelog. So 2 years.
Wow.
Like crazy.
Well, um,
Oh my goodness, somebody in the chat just said that they remember picking up 200 snowballs to get beta access. Do you remember doing that? I remember
I remember that.
we
That's
made that.
before my time. I do not remember that. How did that work?
All right, so there was like we had like a closed beta and like we were just having fun one day and decided like we're going to give somebody else access to the beta, but we need them to do something fun, so we made them pick up 200 snowballs and yeah, there it was.
Wow, that's incredible. I was not aware of that one.
I mean, we wanted people who are actually going to use it and like help us to find issues and play on it so that we could get bug reports. And the only way I guess that we figured out to do it was find people who were willing to do crazy tasks just to get it. So
Well,
Pretty much.
Mhm.
Go for it.
I was gonna say, like, at the time too, before approval and stuff like that, like the people that you did get, uh, it is a bit weird because like there is still people that even after approval will sit here and be skeptical of HDOS, but like at the time, I mean the growth has been like very natural over time, but there are some people that I guess I probably joined or started being active like January of this year. But like there are some people that have been there ever since like you guys actually started like open beta or anything like that, right?
yeah, there's been some people have been here a long, long time. I would say like some notable people that I still see in the chat are like Duffman has been here, Zuck has been, obviously Pan. There's been a lot. There's been a lot of people that have kind of stuck through the whole time, ever since the beginning. It's really a passion for a lot of people. A lot of people really like this era of the game.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, it feels really amazing that you can make something that other people find. You pour your passion into a project, and then other people can recognize it and enjoy the work that you make. It's a nice thing.
Hmm
Finally glad that we finally, I guess, proved ourselves. For a long time, yeah, it's like always an uphill battle ever since day one, trying to prove who we are to people and that we're not
Right.
malicious. That
Yeah, it was very hard to sell. Like, hey, just use our client. Like, we're good people. You can trust us. I mean, like,
Mhm.
at face value, I always understood why like people would be skeptical of that. But yeah, at least now that we've been approved, that's kind of gone away, and we're able to just kind of share our work without being told we're scammers or hackers or whatever.
Yeah, what was it that we're gonna get them banned, and then it was that we are in our SPS. Some people thought we were in our SPS or something
Oh
like
yeah. hmm
that.
There are some people like we were like, "Hey, streamer, why don't you use this thing? It's pretty cool." And then they're like, "No, unless you pay me or something." It's like, "No, this is not the way this works."
Yeah.
Yeah.
On things like Reddit, I think it's very funny that I mean the public appearance of HDOS has improved. Like it's not as I mean there was a time where it was like shadow banned on Reddit and stuff like that,
Mhm.
but even after approval, like it's not seen as malicious or anything like that anymore. But someone had pointed out the other day that like if you're on Reddit or one of these other social media platforms, some people are like if you share an HDOS picture or video, you must be an advertiser or you must be someone that's been like paid by us, which I don't understand how people assume we have money. Like people think that we just have like a massive thing of cash and we're actually just like giving out like just so much money for people to like go on Reddit and be like HDOS good, which is bizarre. But I get like there's theories that it's so weird.
No, I definitely agree. There's just
Mhm.
people are gonna say what they're gonna say, and if they're saying anything, it's kind of a good thing. Just to have our name being talked about, and more people being brought aware that there is another third-party client that they can use is good for me. So
People were wanting this for such a long time too. I keep on seeing comments on older clients and past discussions of people wanting this era. It's just, yeah, I wish more
I think
people were aware that it exists, I
one
guess.
thing we were up against in like the early days and probably are still really up against was like with the OSHD client that was around for a little bit.
Yeah.
Like we were up against that, like what happened with that client and
Oh
kind of
yeah.
the stigma that happened, and so we kind of had to make our own name while being essentially the same thing in a way. So it was like really difficult to like navigate through that.
Oh yeah. So many people thought we were OSHD.
hmm
Probably some people still think we're OSHD, but we do not know the devs. We never talk to the devs. It's a completely separate thing.
Well, the thing that I think a lot of people miss for people that don't use HDOS, a lot of people will just look at it and say like it's definitely replicating or emulating the era that, was this RuneScape HD. But I think so many people that have not actually looked a bit further into this project is how many additions that have been, like, for example, on the stream right now, we're able to see the results of extended render distance. Like, that wasn't there in 2009, or like so many of the other brilliant features that make it feel like a lot more of a modern MMO, whether it's like the region filtering or anything like that. So, like, obviously, a lot of the people that are waiting for plugins and stuff like that are waiting to use the client, but like, what are your guys's like, again, this is so much more than just like an HD client. There's like so much more on top of it. Did you guys actually expect to get this advanced with it?
Definitely not at first. At first, it was just kind of a fun project, and we thought that it could be something that we could accomplish, and then I guess over time it evolved into what it is today. That's kind of the natural course for all projects, though. Like you just start with something, and it just you get to a certain point, and then you're like, what else? What's next? But yeah, definitely, and I don't think Brain either. I don't think we ever thought that we would have it to where it is today, um, or maybe not so soon, I guess.
Yeah, it was like a vision that we had. Like we remember, this client could still be configured to put back into the original pure 2008. So like you can set the view distance back to 3, you can lock the zoom, and you can crank down the graphics and everything looks exactly as it was in 2008. But for those who also want to see the remastered version of 2008, like a more modern version of it, then that's also what we can do. And kind of what we've been trying to push for is trying to make it more comfortable in the more modern era. So one of the biggest thing was the performance improvements. So it was kind of also forced upon us because a lot of the original engine that this client was built on, the technology from that is all deprecated. The fixed function pipeline, a lot of it was deprecated in modern hardware. So we had to move it into the more modern, I guess, the modern systems so that it would perform better.
Uh, I'll actually cut in and ask you, Brain. So I actually have been asked, or people have asked me rather, and I don't know how to answer them all the time because I am not as knowledgeable as you and Pat when it comes to the intricacies of like the game engine and everything like that. But I have had people ask me. So like we can disregard OS Buddy right now. I don't even think many people are using it or if it's even like being kept up to date. But for the sake of conversation with both RuneLight and HDOS, people have asked me how even on lower end builds and stuff like that, how they're able to render like not just like so much higher of an FPS and it's so much smoother, but like basically what I'm asking is, in like very simple terms, in a explain it like I'm 5 type of way, why does this client perform so well?
It's more optimized and multi-threaded, and it uses much more. It takes advantage of more modern, but not too modern, rendering techniques.
For those that aren't familiar, could you explain multi-threaded real quick? Like, what does
So
that mean?
basically, instead of using one of your processor cores, let's say you had a multi-core system, right? You have 4 cores, 8 cores, or like these modern CPUs have like 16 cores. It can leverage all of that CPU power, and it can better utilize your hardware than it could before, much more efficiently. So if you have a lot of hardware, it can use a lot of hardware. So like just because we can get 500 FPS, it's like a big whoop. It's just a nice number. But the important part of that is that 500 on like a good machine simply means that divided by 10, and that's pretty much what we're gonna get on the lower end machines, right? And that was the goal. So it can still squeeze all of the power that you have out of your hardware more efficiently at the lower ends. And it also applies to the higher ends too, which is why you get these crazy numbers that we get.
Part of it too is just that everything that we did thinking about performance. So that's kind of like adds up over time. You start doing like a lot of, there's a lot of different things that have to be done. And at each point, you just kind of make sure that you're doing it the best that you can. And that's kind of the result here. But yeah, definitely just upgrading to modern techniques and leveraging what's already known to be possible, and putting it into
Not too modern too. It doesn't require, so this only requires OpenGL 3.1 to run. So if you have that hardware, it should run good on it, which is like anything within the last 10 years, it should run good on. And kind of the spirit of the game for since the very beginning is that you don't need a good computer to run RuneScape, which is kind of been the philosophy we've been wanting to ensure that we kept, despite us trying to push the boundaries and remastering things. And that's also one of the aspects that we try to improve on. It's try to improve on the limitations that they had while retaining their original style. So like extending the render distance or improving the lighting model is something that we try to, or that we're aiming for. It's not change what they intended from back then, but trying to improve it, or remove the limiters that they had back then because of hardware limitations.
Right.
So it's just moving the goalpost that existed from back then, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's you guys have been able to do that so very beautiful. Like one of the main how would I describe the alluring things to me for this project is exactly as you just described, where for what I saw from OSHD, like the project itself did look impressive, but the way you guys would describe like trying to keep the original style or not trying to stray too far from what old school RuneScape was meant to like feel like, but at the same time not play like I still log into the vanilla client sometimes and I forget. Like it actually feels like two different games if you were to go between the two clients. But at the same time, uh it feels again natural. I think a lot of people have enjoyed this client for the nostalgia type of feeling. I mean, there's a lot of even like basic item overrides or NPCs that people have not seen in years, but now that we have access to, people are able to see it, and I think that's uh part of the enjoyment there for sure.
Definitely. Just like a nice what I find too is like people can show their friends pictures of this game who maybe have no idea what RuneScape is, and it usually what from what I've heard is the result is like, oh, that looks pretty cool or something like that. Whereas like I know a lot of times you show your friends, or I'll show my friends RuneScape and they'll just be like, that game looks like I can't, like it looks really old. And I mean, that's part of the charm of old school RuneScape. That's why it's there. But definitely for those people who have never even heard of it, it's kind of a nice option to show them.
It's a nice balance. It's not obviously not modern, but it's
Mhm.
not. It's a nice in between. It's like a more modern take on the old school style that they did, and I felt that this is a nice balance between old and new. This era that they had, and we all enjoyed this era for a long time. 2008 to 2012, they kept this era for 4 years, right?
Mhm.
And
Absolutely. Yeah.
some of my best memories were around on this era, and it was the same for a lot of people too. And like just talking with my friends and remember the good old times from back then. And it was usually around this time. It's uh yeah,
Yep.
it was
Nostalgia.
yeah.
Well, this client does invoke a lot of nostalgia, but I guess I'll bite the bullet and I'll ask what a lot of people are probably waiting for. Even though at the time of RuneScape HD, plugins were not exactly popular,
Mhm.
but there is now this new era of RuneScape gameplay where the client is more so facilitating as a piece of utility for people. And so like when I had first come along on this project, you guys had again, it was still like very bare bones, and that I think a lot of people are able to recognize how much easier the game is with the plugins that they've been using from RuneLight for so many years that the cost of not being able to have them now is it's too much. Like they are so very reliant on it. So I guess my question would be, uh, because now post approval,
Mhm.
a lot of the core stuff that was not done is done. Like it's a lot more of a solid product. But now, as far as retention and attracting new users goes, uh, we got to talk about plugins. And I think I don't think a lot of people are aware of your guys' viewpoints on plugins, or rather, the amount of work and the amount of I mean NPC indicators. I don't want to spoil that, but that's like an example I'm thinking of right now. The blood, sweat, and tears that gets put into a aesthetically pleasing product. So what's so we got to talk about it. What's going on at the plugins?
Hmm. So I think like one of the big things with plugins is, I guess, what we've done up to this point has been, so thought out and planned, and then to just have this all of a sudden the need to just put in plugins and answer the people's wishes. We need a balance between putting them in and putting them in our way, like putting them in a way that feels like it's part of the game and feels like it's not just thrown together. I guess like we don't want to just put them in and then be like, oh well, now that they look out of place, and work on them gradually over time. It's more like we're gonna do them right, and that's a I mean, that's challenging. Some of the plugins themselves are like full applications, like just full on, like tons of logic, tons of UI stuff that needs to be implemented, and it takes time. And when we are very passionate about the other parts of the game, like the restorations, the graphics, all that stuff, it's
Yeah.
kind of challenging to make sure that we're giving it that effort. But I think we've kind of come to a point now where we're like, all right, let's get these plugins done because these are the ones that people really want, and then we'll reassess what needs to be, you know, taken care of.
It's making it. It's trying to respect the style of the game and not just slap on some accessory as if, uh, as if I guess it's trying to make plugins as if how Jagex would have made them back then to make it sure they could look and feel as part of the game in the era. And a lot of effort has gone into trying to embed everything into the game as much as possible so it doesn't feel like an external accessory. And plugins were never really our priority, and still won't be our priority. But we understand it's something that people want, and we want to do them in a way that respects what our core mission is.
Yeah. I think you guys have done a brilliant job with those that you've implemented thus far in accomplishing exactly that. Where, again, we joke about it all the time, right? Where whenever we're trying to reference RuneLight, with because it's so simple, and I think obviously RuneLight has been out for so many years, and there is a lot of like core plugins that came out, and then there's obviously the community plugin hub that was slapping more stuff on top of it to where it does end up being a bit of a jumbled mess. But gosh, I really wish before the stream we had put out those NPC indicators, because I'd love to be able to reference that of something that people use, especially for like the PVM community, the high end bossing community. Something that it's one of those features that it's not game breaking. It's not like cheating to the point of like it's doing it for you, but it helps a lot of people to do things like the Inferno and stuff like that. So um, it is understandable, like you guys have said. But with the plugins you guys have right now, we talk about bank stuff and quest stuff being like some of the bigger chunks, but of the stuff that exists right now that's currently in the live build, like what were some of the biggest plugins, like just biggest workloads that took you guys the most time?
I think we just put in the amount of time that is needed for each plugin, so it's like very case by case. But I know one plugin that took a little bit to get going, or I guess the thing too that you can't take in, or that you have to take into consideration, is that some of the way that we do plugins is different than the way that RuneLight might do plugins. So we have, I guess, more access to the client directly, and the client scripts, so we can do a little bit more. But that, if you count that effort to get to the point where we have access to that, like that in itself is a whole project. And now
Right.
having the plugins on top. But I guess one plugin that takes good advantage of that is the um, attack indicator, or the plugin that makes it so pures don't get defense
Attack
XP.
styles.
Attack
Yep.
styles, that's right.
Yep.
That one.
So that one takes really good advantage of that technology, because the plugin itself is like not many lines of code at all. It's all just done with the game, and that's really our methodology with all of the plugins. How can we make it so that it works with the game engine and not on top of it? Like, what does the game naturally do, and how do we make it do what we want? So that is really what takes the time to like figure out how to morph the existing ideas that everyone has kind of come to agreement that,
Mhm.
hey, this is a good idea and we want this plugin, but how do we morph it into um, our goal or our style for the plugins? So yeah, I'd say attack styles was one. I'm sure Brain has done a bunch that are take quite some time.
It's a lot of logic and data, and unfortunately, the sad truth is plugins just don't fit in the game. A lot of plugins Jagex just never did plugins, or the game wasn't designed around how plugins are used to being interfaced with. It's just hard to interface it in a more natural way with the game that it doesn't look out of place or it fits the game, and that's really hard to do with a lot of plugins. At least how people are used to them. And one of the hardest parts are to say on your topic was just laying down the infrastructure of the plugins, the framework. But specifically in terms of plugin difficulty, plugins besides the logic, it's more so trying to take what already exists and make it look and feel a part of the client. Like all our settings, for example, are all inside the game, and they feel because they all use the native toolkit within the game, and it is actually all a part of the game, and that's why we got the mobile client working, or that could work.
No.
Everything is a part of the game, and I guess to stay on focus, probably Loot Tracker. Loot Tracker is probably one of the hardest plugins just in terms of sheer Loot Tracker and I guess Clue Scrolls. Just the amount of logic involved is just disgusting, and the UI work involved, it's hard to pull off. It's a lot of work, but once it's done pretty much. It's just maintaining it.
Mm-hmm.
But for a long time, it's just the attitude towards plugins because they weren't really our goal, and it feels unless we do them well, we couldn't. It feels almost disrespectful just to slap plugins in there without trying to make it. It's like we're trying to respect the art style, but then doing plugins without trying to respect the style would just devalue the work that we've been doing. So we try to either avoid the problem entirely by just not doing plugins, or we have to take the time to make it look correct, or we try to. Of course, we're still refining that process and improving it, but I think we're starting to hone in on this particular style time.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Remy knows that like when we're talking about plugins, like we're talking about them for like days, maybe about just like the how we want to approach it, what we're gonna do with it. Maybe just we just put a lot of effort into it, and for that reason, when they are done, when we do have all of the plugins that are going to be required for people to feel like they aren't lacking features or lacking things they need to do, bosses or whatever it may be, then I think everyone's gonna be happy. So that's kind of the thing. We want to do it once, do it right, and then that's really it.
Well, I want to make sure we don't talk about plugins forever, but I'll segue into this next point, and then we're going to move away from plugins. But the main two that the large majority of people are waiting for are both the bank features, which includes bank tags, and Quest Helper. So these are two that have kept us up at night, that have made us lose sleep in the anticipation that eventually we will have to do these. But can the users anticipate at some point that there may be those two in the client sooner rather than later?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, those are. Well, I know bank tags for sure, or something we have planned. It's I think the attitude towards Quest Upper for a while was we felt that because that's part of the client, that the aim of the project is to restore the era that we grew up in, and during that era, these plugins weren't really a part of that at all. We just enjoyed the game exactly as it was, when we felt perfectly happy just without the plugins, a more simpler time. And personally, I think we all wish that that simpler time returned too, but I don't think that's going to be happening. What I'm trying to get into was, I remember just going on the wiki and enjoying all the hard work from the wikis, like people making their own blogs, their own tutorials on how to do things. That was part of the nostalgia. Of course, it was a grind, and it was a part of the experience that I feel just gets taken away when you just add things like Quest Helper, and plus all the hard work that the devs put into making the quest in the first place. That, like, imagine the first experience you have engaging with a game you do it through Quest Helper or something like that. It just really is. It's not a good feeling to think that. But in all fairness, in most cases, people who use that, it's not their first time. It's probably like their 100th time, most likely.
Right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. And it's always been the first case that imagining the first experience in the game, interacting with the game, or and doing a quest is through the assistance of a quest helper. Like so many MMOs are really just like go here, click this, and there's no depth to them. And RuneScape has very in-depth, good quests, and I feel just things like quest helper devalue that beautiful aspect of the game.
All right. I would
And
actually agree with you on that one.
Yeah, I think
Mhm.
I think that you're right that they devalue it, and I think the point you brought up that many people are reliving it, and something Remy had said the other day was that um, Jagex does make game modes, like you have leagues, Dead Man mode, Fresh Start Worlds, all of that thing where you have to, part of that is recompleting the quests, and I think for that reason, like Quest Helper is like you just want to, at that point you really just want to click. You don't want to focus. You just want to get through it as quick as possible. Especially like Deadman mode, like you're literally trying to complete things faster than other people so that you're stronger and whatnot. So in that point, I do see that it's kind of it's a double-edged sword for sure. But I think
Well,
when we do it, or if we do it,
mhm.
depending on um, how the discussions and everything go, but I think there's so much that HDOS has in its toolbox to give Quest Helper even more life and make maybe like different modes for how much you want to be assisted, and like maybe like ways to make it, I don't know, hard to turn it on if you haven't completed the quest before or something like that. I don't know how we would even accomplish that, but it's just something we've talked about, looked into, and
Yeah.
yeah, keeping integrity is kind of important because the game needs to live.
And a fair
Absolutely.
point that someone made was like in one of the integral parts that we kept is that you can turn all plugins off with a switch.
Hmm.
Like since day one, you could just if you don't want plugins at all, you can turn them all on and off immediately. And by default, originally it was like all plugins should be off because the whole point of the client is to be a pure restoration of the era. And back then, plugins didn't exist, so plugins are off by default. But of course, in the modern era, which is also what we need to respect, is well, people want their plugins. It's not really plugins; it's more like features of the client. I guess is a better attitude to think of it.
Hmm.
Quality of life that people wish were officially in the game. I can
Right.
also
Yeah.
understand. But the thing is too that back then we were perfectly fine without plugins, right? We People were fine doing the grind. That was the game. They just accepted it and didn't think twice. And all of
Hmm.
a sudden now people are acting as if they need it. I'm just like for years we didn't need them.
Well,
That,
if you think about back then too, one thing
yeah.
is like what were the hard bosses to fight back then? Like what were like the really hard mechanical.
KVD God Wars, like God Wars was 2007, and at that time it was seen as like
Hmm.
these are the big bosses. Like God Wars is like the end game.
Yeah, now people just click in like three squares and click on a cannon, and like they just like the NPC can't even hit them. Like people have really evolved in a way that like the mechanics that they've kind of figured out in part, I think, make it's a completely different game. Like the game is just uh yeah, it's evolved since then, and I think that's kind of like why
Mhm.
plugins are needed, because also the activities people are doing, and much like in large, I think many people are moving towards high level PVM, and like that's kind of the goal for them. But I remember back in the day, like at least for me, it was like PvP. Like I wanted to build accounts, go and
Mm.
like fight
Yeah.
people on pures, go in the wilderness. So I think like
Mhm.
the game has really shifted, and that's kind of where the need for these plugins that let you mark tiles so that you don't misclick on this mechanic that has like, you know.
Right. I mean, you mentioned bosses, like, because I know there's a lot of other features besides that, but like, imagine showing going to the year 2006 and someone that's like considers themselves a boss, or you like KVD and Califite Queen and stuff like that. Imagine throwing them in the Theater of Blood. Imagine throwing a 2006 to 2008 RuneScape player into Theater of Blood with no context. Imagine. Like, as you said, it's a totally different game. A lot has evolved. And I think the other thing, I want to say it was a Jimmy video, funny enough. It's one that sticks in my mind, is that, because, like, again, this era of the client is also my favorite. Because, again, I've played RuneScape since around 2005. I played all the way up until the evolution of combat. Like, this game has always been a massive, massive thing for me. But for example, in my comparison, like, I was probably around 7 years old around the time I started playing RuneScape, and I spent the first year only thinking that Lumbridge and Al Kharid were the game. I had no idea anything else was outside of that. But now, because a lot of us, grew up through elementary and middle school and stuff like that, is when a lot of people remember RuneScape. But now, all of those kids that grew up, we're all adults now. Like, a lot of us have jobs, a lot of us have like actual real life stuff going on. And despite that, we still come back to this game, and it's fascinating because there's a level, or rather like a spectrum of the seriousness of certain RuneScape players, because there's a lot of people that are just, I consider myself more of a casual player. Like, I'm not going to do like super efficient things, but I have an idea of what I'm doing and stuff like that. Meanwhile, I'm in Discords where a lot of people know that I like to lurk, and when people are screen sharing, I will watch people that are playing on like 8 accounts at once, like maximum efficient, like the EHP people, the people that are in like Omnia and all those super high efficient skilling and PVM and Slayer clans and stuff like that. So the game, it's the same game, but as Pat said, there's a lot of, I think a lot of people play for different reasons than they did when they were younger, for sure.
Yeah, it turned more into efficiency than purely just enjoying the game, just for the sake of just hanging with your friends and just doing cool, I guess, geeky achievements, just like PvP, right? I remember just being absolutely entertained with the geek aspect, just spiting people out of nowhere, just hilarious, and just really just enjoying the game. I never cared about experience past that. Oh yeah, higher level, stronger. I can PK people harder. Cool, right?
Yeah.
Just
it wasn't
really
a necessity too. Like,
yeah, exactly. It's just cool just to play it and enjoy it. Talk with your friends and just have very simple achievements. And it's just really evolved. And yeah, personally, I wish it was a more simpler time. But yeah, like Stu, like
I think it's like such a, it's good and it's good and bad. It's again, like all these crazy mechanics, like it does let those players who really love that sort of thing just go crazy, like just sit there and figure out these, how to like skip puzzles or like do crazy like boss mechanics where they like stand underneath an NPC and then attack it at a certain tick, and they're just like all like perfect mechanism. It's it's really actually cool to watch people do that. But I think in
back
that
then,
same light,
as kids, we didn't understand the tick-based system that the game ran on. I mean, I think
Yeah.
one of the things that helped us growing up, and I think a lot of people that are more in like the programming realm and stuff like that, they do have an advantage of like, oh wait, I understand actually how this game works, and that's what ended up happening through the years, where everyone's like, wait, what is it, a 600 millisecond tick? How people can use that for things like protection prayers or boost prayers, and like try to maximize. I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever watched Autumn Elegy, but people like that, where they see 1 or 2 lost ticks, is detrimental. And again, I sit like anytime I think of someone like that, and I do understand the appeal, and I do understand like the want to be efficient and hit the goals that you want to at a certain time and stuff like that. But then again, I think of myself back in the day of like a public library. Me and my boy after school were sitting there like I'm pretty sure he would be sitting in the duel arena for like hours, and I was like, I don't know, cutting willows and drainer or something like that. And now there's people that again like they play on several accounts. People are doing these high end PVM things. I mean, there's still a little bit of a PvP scene, but a lot of these newer things, a lot of people are expecting a little bit more to, uh, as one of you had said, like features that maybe should already be in the client if Jagex is implementing these more complex mechanics.
As people said too, if since plugins are now a thing, if you don't have them, you're at a disadvantage. So that's kind of the philosophy. If plugins simply didn't exist, like Jagex declared that third-party clients were all bye-bye, then that would be maybe people would be fine with it. But I could also understand like this is how people want to play the game. Like perhaps understanding the tick bits in it adds an extra depth to the game or a perspective on the game that people didn't see before, and that maybe it can make the game uh, more complicated than what was once realized, and they can take advantage of that to make it more fun for them. So perhaps having more efficiency is more so um, the fun part of it. It's like the achievement is to reach back to efficiency in the most efficient routes of things. Um, and that's part of the fun, perhaps. It's like trying to get the high scores or trying to get the number as high as you can. And well, for me personally, that's not how I evolved to play the game, and I just remember a more simpler time. But I can understand for sure.
In that same light, though, like myself included, like did you ever advance to even do like raids 1 or raids 2? Like up until recently, when like we started having issues with them, like I had never even completed those raids just because I stopped playing seriously, like probably like right before raids 1, and then like those all came out, and then now I'm just like probably a complete noob when it comes to
Exactly.
like it's just so I guess in that light, like we don't have the same understanding probably as somebody who, does them with their friends casually or maybe does them with a group of people very seriously.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
that's one of the advantages that I think the reason our team works pretty well is because, as many people know, it is typically you, Brain Free, and Pat that are typically working on some of the more complex back end things. Uh, but we do have like people like myself and also Panulator or Rebellious that are like still trying to play maybe more frequently and are like kind of more like for example Panulator like he has a lot of the PVM knowledge that we're asking him of what people maybe think that we would need for this and that and all that good stuff. And I think it was part of the magic to me of RuneScape was there's actually it's almost like a high school cafeteria where there's all these little subsections of people. And I think you could say that for almost any MMO, but there's like the skillers and the PVMers and PvPers and all that different stuff. But at the end of the day, like it is the same game. And as Brain, you were saying, to be able to revitalize the love and the feeling that people had originally playing this game and maybe trying to move towards like helping people to forget that this isn't an office job. I think a lot of people there's this very slippery slope of like, oh my god, if I'm not doing the most efficient thing, if I'm not using the most efficient gear, if I'm not using every single tick to my maximum efficiency, I'm playing incorrectly. And I think that's pretty weird. Again, like for people that enjoy that and stuff like that, it's cool. But there's also this almost elitism type of mindset on it. But I wanted to unless you guys had something else to input on the subject of plugins, I figured we can just go down the list of the podcast questions in the Discord channel. What do you think?
Yeah, we can hit a couple of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Remember, Lay
All
was
right.
talking about so never mind. We're sorry. We just go down the podcast questions. Sorry.
Sure. No. You're all good. Well, I'm a bit biased because I've been staring at this ever since it started, but I'll actually reference the person that asks each question. We'll try to go like a little bit of a Jagex route, all right? But all right.
Mm.
So the first question we got coming from Jacob. We love Jacob in the HDOS Discord. Can you take a guess as to what he's going to ask? The question is agile when?
Yeah.
Super. Oh, for super.
Yeah, agile soon. TM.
Well, actually, here I'll expand on it. Graceful or agile is actually one of the unique things of the HDOS client that a lot of people really love, like certain overrides. We'll get to a couple other questions where people referenced it, but uh, for right now, I know we have things like graceful to agile, or I'm trying to think of a RuneScape HD specific override that we have. But what are your guys' plans for, like, let's say, if we were to do as much as possible, like Elder Maul to Chaotic Maul, for example, or Grazi Rapier to Chaotic Rapier and all that, like, what do you guys have any plans concerning that, or is it just going to be like color agile and then we are never touching these ever again?
No, definitely. Like we really that's part of like the fun part. I think is like figuring out what can be upgraded and where it fits and what it fits with. I know later there's a question, or maybe there might not be a question, but I do know somebody asked it in the Discord the other day. Is something about the ectophile, if that could be upgraded. And the thing with that is like we could, or the animation for it. It's like we have looked into it, but it just doesn't fit as is. So like there might be some custom stuff that needs to be done before it's completely possible to make it look right. And so that's kind of just like the thing too, is if we can upgrade it, sure, we could just like throw in the chaotic maul over the elder maul, but then like you you always have to have the toggle for that stuff like that, because the thing with agile or the graceful did not port over to HDOS well. Like it did not look good on HDOS. So we kind of were forced, or not forced, but like the agile was a really good solution to making it not only look upgraded and fit the time period, but also it replaced something that just was an eyesore. And so right now, if you look at the chaotic maul, that's not really the case. So it's not necessarily like, yes, this has to be an override because it fits the period. So maybe a plugin where you're able to do some overrides or something like that. But at least that's my take on it.
It needs to fit the look and feel of the game. So that's the most important thing. Is a lot of the assets that we upgrade are they look and feel as if they are the original OS one, but just higher detail. And that's kind of the rule of thumb to keep. And for a lot of things that we've already overridden, it was the HD equivalent from back then. And for Agile specifically, the pieces that didn't exist back then, we had to make ourselves to fit the RSHD style, and that's a burden we have to do for all the new OS assets over time, is to remaster them into the RSHD style and make sure they look and feel a part of the game as they with the rest of the assets or the theme.
Ooh, one I would really like to mention of something that it was assets that were in RuneScape HD, but it is actually something that's completely customizable to us, is with our remaster of Guardians of the Rift, and to replace the Raiments of the Eye with the original Great Orb Project robes. The blue, yellow, and green sets were originally in RuneScape HD, but with the recolors of the Raiments, we had to make the custom red set, which even though it didn't exist at that time, it is easily one of my favorite custom things of HDOS because it's exactly like you said, where it's using those same assets, but it's still it's still fulfilling the set that actually was added to old school RuneScape. But again, it feels like a lot of the custom things that one of the big things that scared me about HDOS was that it would feel like a private server or it would feel too custom or like or halfway done or anything like that. But the ones that have been implemented just look so good. And I know a lot of the remasters for a lot of items, I know like Twisted Bow and stuff like that, a lot of it's leyline, right?
Yeah. They did a good job. And the scary thing that I discussed with them too is right now it's not remastering is 100% what we want to do, but right now it's simply not the focus. Right, the timeline of the client is restoration and remastering for the most part, and we try. There's some things that we try doing in parallel, but once is the main focus, then all our dev efforts could go into that and making better tooling. And it's mostly we want to take this very seriously, and it's not having a well defined plan and strategy of doing it in a grand scale that's scary. And for the things that can be done reliably and I guess confidently, we can do. And things that we lack tooling for, or we're not sure if it's what we want to do in the first place, or what style and approach to take on things in general, the lack of a plan or a more formal plan is why we're hesitant on doing more at this point. But once we move into that phase, then it's going to be our full focus. And it's something we would want to get the community involved in with, if it's allowed, 100%.
Yeah, it's like it's kind of like the methodology where it's like sure you can like take a knife and like use it as a screwdriver, but you know that a screwdriver exists and you just want to kind of wait till you have the screwdriver so you don't strip the screw or something like that. Like you want to make sure that you're actually that there's a better way. So just like being hesitant not to just jump the gun and just dive right into it and just put something in there just to have it and then have to redo it later. Yeah, definitely the right approach. But yes, yeah, Tom's been doing great work on the reworks and recently the map restoration stuff. So
oh, they're insane. I did all of Artie, which took them. How long did it take them? It took them like 4.
It was about a month.
Yeah,
It was about a month that Lay had worked on our own.
They worked like full time, 24/7 on that thing, and it turned out perfect. Like looking at that, I even looked at old OS HD videos from back then too. Before we're like, I remember when we very first started the project. We started the project. Well, I started this project, or what? It was before OS HD when OS HD was a thing, and then it was
2017 was when you originally made the repo, I believe.
Yeah, and then OS HD was the thing. I was just working on it just for like giggles, or was taking it seriously. I was just curious if it would work, and then we continued it. Then me and Pat were starting to talk, and I picked it back up, and me and Pat were like, "Ooh, let's work on this together, and this will work," and evolved into this.
It was extremely fun. Like every bit of HDOS is extremely fun to work on. So it's like, yeah, there's parts that are just like grueling, like we talked about plugins earlier.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like even those comparatively to like some business architecture or some like other thing that you might be programming for, like it's extremely rewarding to just make something that's I guess, something you can visual. It's very visual. Like you implement something and then you boot the client and there it is. Like it's really it's
Well, actually, that exact note that would lead me to the next question because I know again a lot of our priority recently has been, or I guess for both like me and Lay, it's the restoration. You guys have been doing the plugins, but we've been talking that once we get this most recent plugin batch to completion, that we are going to go back to more of the unique HDOS development features that you guys are excited for because you like Pat was just saying like the things of which you're able to work on, load up the client, and instantly see the results of. So what I want to ask is, like, even though you guys have talked to me about it before, but after we get some of these essentials out to see if we can appease a lot of the users that we currently have, what are some of the next upcoming features or certain improvements to the client that people can be looking forward to?
I'll let Brain take this one. I think he has something he's really excited to work on.
Oh yeah. Longest like one of the OSHD or HDOS. It's we have the original 2008 engine and client, and one of the things that we want to do is try to take all the limitations that they had back then and remove them. So basically, any compromises or any weaknesses in the detail that they wanted to do and they intended to do, but they simply were limited from the hardware back then in the constraints that they had, we would like to take the time and improve upon them and try to modernize and improve the quality of things. Like the performance is one, the render distance is one, um, unlocking the frame rate was another one. So everything is really smooth. And now the next step, I believe, is something we wanted to do with the lighting model in the client, which the lighting and the shadows were how they did it back then. They made they had to they didn't have the ability to add real time shadows, but I know they wanted to. Looking at how things were designed and what compromises they had to do to achieve what they did with the constraints that they had. It's like, oh, they wanted nicer shadows and nicer lighting models, but of course it was not really possible back then to do such things in a very efficient way given their constraints again. So improving that is the next step, I believe. So lighting and the shadows are the next step. Been itching to do that because I believe it will really improve the details of what they intended for things to be back then. And it'll be an extremely hard task to do so in a way that respects the existing style and doesn't look out of place. Very difficult if it's possible. I know the shadows should be very straightforward, but the lighting model that we have to choose will be very very slow and methodical in how we approach it. It would have to be either it's going to be perfect or it's not going to be added at all type of situation. And that's sort of how, well, mostly how our attitude has been to a lot of things. And if the priority is always making sure that it looks and feels as it did back then, and not to disrespect the style or the essence of what it was, and always try to maintain it, but simply take what was and then improve it, but not change it, which is a hard thing to do. But I think we did a good job so far. Like this still looks and feels like it did back then, but now it's just smoother and nicer. At least I feel.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, if you look at some of the just videos, if you haven't been playing on the client, or you load up the client and you take a look, like the animations, they're just like they're just crispy. Like they're nice. They feel especially like some of the newer animations, like they just added for TOA and such like that. Like
Oh yeah.
yeah, like you have they're high quality, and
Hmm.
stuff like that just really, I think, it's something you look at all the time. I remember every time that we do something that affects everything, it ends up being like one of the major like key points of HDOS that we're like, why didn't we do this sooner?
Oh,
I
like the
know
zoom.
the zoom, because you use it every single time you play. I remember when we did the ground, like we started upgrading the ground, like way back when. It was like, holy moly, this actually does make a big difference. It's like you just can't see it until you see it, and then yeah, it's just such a big jumping step for HDOS when that kind of moment happens. And I think that's kind of what you're sensing with the lighting and shadows, is that that's gonna be the one of those moments where it's like, oh yeah, this is actually making things much better, or much nice option.
Well, one
Hmm.
of the things that was teased a couple months back that has yet to be implemented for reasons I could take a guess, but Matthew 4 was wanting to know what happened to the awesome skyboxes that were teased. And I know the only real application we have them on for the live build right now is the Guardians of the Rift one. But a
Hmm.
lot of the other ones that were teased included, it was a lot of the RS3 ones, but mainly having to do with nice sun, nice sunny day, and that's gonna bring us into weather. So basically, that's my question uh, for to basically redirect Matthew's question. Basically, ask you guys what's up with the skyboxes and what are your guys' plans for weather.
Hmm.
So for skyboxes, one challenge is, or I guess like it's not really a challenge, but will take some time. Is like you have a nice sunny day, and then you go into a cave. Like now you don't want that nice sunny day, so it takes time because we're going to uh, either have to get the data that tells what place should have what skybox, which I think exists somewhere,
Hmm.
or we're going to have to define it in some cases. So that's like one of the things, is like, sure, we have the getting the technology in the client is the hard part, but then like actually putting it in and making it feel really usable. Like you can see in Guardians of the Rift here, like it works, like and it's there. And so once we get to it, I guess, is part of kind of what's holding it back, I think.
It's making it sure that's more than just a gimmick, and it looks and feels a part of the game. So when we try to do it, it tries to be good everywhere and consistent, not just good in some places and not so good in other places. I remember I saw one person mention in a chat that like the crossbow animation doesn't look as good with tween, and that's 100% correct. Like there's some work that we still have to do to make things to what we want. Someone mentioned that tween for
Hmm.
the crossbow animation makes it feel less powerful. 100% agree, and that's definitely one thing we need to fix. And I think it was just those specific frames needed tweeting disabled, and we needed to. It's literally just another thing on our infinitely tall list of things to do. But 100% agree. Um, so for skyboxes, yeah, it's making sure that it fits well with the area that they're going to be assigned to if we do add them, and um, making sure it's good. Hmm.
Hmm. And so, like with the weather stuff, like sure, like if and when we do add like weather effects, which I think might be like more of a case by case sort of, like maybe events or certain things, like we might do something with weather, and maybe later on plug in or something. But yeah, like in that case, it might fit where we just define it and it fits with the overall theme of the scene. But like if it's not intended to be a certain way, like then we can't really justify it to just like put it in because it looks good. Like sure, it looks great, but does it fit the intention that the people developing this game went for? And that's
It,
kind of the
hmm
you know.
respecting the artists from back then is another important design consideration we always make. Like, we could always slap on gimmicky stuff everywhere, and we always try to avoid that. Though it may be pretty, like, we have skyboxes in here already. We could just turn them on by default. But we feel that it kind of I'm not really one for gimmicks, and trying to be respectful to the original style of things as much as possible.
Mhm.
And if we can't make it look and feel good, if we can't feel confident in what it appears to be, then I would just avoid or be hesitant to even add it in the first place.
Well,
Like in Guardians of the Rift here, like it makes sense. Like nobody
Exactly.
can really argue. I mean, people might anyway, but it's hard to argue that it doesn't fit the theme that this place is going for. And so it kind of made sense, like, oh, okay, this is a good improvement, and let's just put it in, and now it gives that the feeling. So yeah,
Well,
that's
in the topic of being able to fit things to the OS theme, and again, we're using a lot of different assets, a different client and stuff. I have a bit of a longer question that was asked by Cost. Now, again, this was a very recent update, but they were basically wondering. So I'll ask it verbatim here. How do you deal with Jagex updating the appearance of game assets, such as with the Varrock Guards or the Elves in 2019, and do you intend to revert them to how they looked in the 2008 to 2011 HD era, or is it done on a case by case basis?
Mhm. Assets. So when Jagex adds new assets and they never existed previously, then we have to remaster them. So basically, make them fit the client the way everything else does, and that's like what we're going to be doing, like much down the road. Um, is kind of like making sure that all of that stuff, because it would be impossible to just try to focus on our the stuff that we can do and then try to also do that. So um I guess we kind of do, we dabble in it when it seems like a necessity. But yeah, it's kind of hard. I mean, we have some processes too that kind of auto upgrade, because luckily Jagex reuses a lot of assets, and we do have upgraded versions of those assets that they reuse. So some, like, say they add like a completely new map, if they use assets from another place that we have restored already, um, then we're gonna have those things upgraded. So it's kind of like it's a bit of automation that's being done, a bit of manual work, and then um, with Jagex's stuff, like they just added recently with the guards, it's like we're gonna have to go in and, like, if we're expected to actually get those guards, you know, accomplished, then we're gonna probably have to go in and manually do that work, and that's not something that we're exactly excited to do, but it is what it is.
Mm-hmm. So when the update drops, the game detects that, hey, new asset, this asset changed. So basically, any of the modifications that we apply to upgrade the asset or restoring the asset get reverted to make sure Jagex's intended update shines through. And then once we realize that the change has been made, eventually, like a few hours later, we're like, oh, it changed. Then we go do it, fix it, or whatever the plan is, and then we deploy a new update to account for the new changes. Mm-hmm. But the engine automatically detects changes and tries to work around the things. It's one of the many things we had to figure out when we made this client.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it just downgraded the assets until we figured out what to do. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the design is basically like, worst case, just give the old school version of it, and at best try to upgrade it, and if it can just figure out how to automatically upgrade it, then it automatically upgrades it, and we're happy. But if not, then at least it's playable, and that's kind of the idea.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in a similar realm, in terms of the work that has to be done to facilitate changes like that, or even again, so much of the work for things that need to go from like OS models to HD and like us doing it by ourselves. A lot of a surprising amount of people, I would actually say, have been asking about, I guess, standard mode as opposed to the high detailed mode. And someone had worded the question very interestingly in the Discord the other day of basically, do you guys plan on fulfilling the high detailed version of this client to 100% completion before moving on to standard mode? Because, like, is it using the same assets and then automatically downgrading them? Or, people aren't exactly sure how it works. So, is there plans or at least a potential look at standard detail, I should say, rather? I apologize.
SD can just be so as we had SD for a while before we did a performance update. So what they did is the assets used in SD and HD are the same, and so the models are the same and the animations are the same. So we don't need to complete the restore to completion before we can re-add SD. SD was simply a design choice because we were spending so much time doing the engine overhaul for the performance upgrade that SD was in shambles, and we knew we could fix it, but we felt back then that not many people used it enough to justify delaying like another month adding SD back into the engine or fixing it. So we just decided like, oh yeah, just keep it up because no one uses it. But I think later on we realized like, hey, a lot of people apparently still don't have graphics cards, which was just baffling to me. I was like, wow, like yeah, I mean, a lot of people just don't have graphics cards at all apparently. So that was something I did not expect, and something we uh, should have accounted for, I guess. But we just didn't have as much users or much information as we do now. So yeah, we don't need to finish the restore before we can do SD, and we do want to do SD. And it is possible to do SD without finishing the restore, or we can do it any time. It's more so will be a big undertaking because really there's nothing to accelerate in SD mode. It's hard to improve the performance of SD mode, and compared to HD mode, it would just be a stark difference. It will be night and day. We couldn't make it. It would be difficult to improve upon it as it is, and not sure what the demand of it is, but uh, if people really want it, we can do it, and we want to do it, but it'll be difficult, and it won't be nearly as good as the HD option.
Hmm. Yeah, I think one of the things was like if you, and like not in a rude way, but like if you want SD, then like Jagex still does offer their client, and it is still an option. Of course, we want it to all be in one place so people don't have to swap between things, but it's yeah, I guess definitely not our main goal or priority. And I think like just like plugins, it really comes down to that. Like if something fits the goal of the project, we're going to give it like our very all, and we're not going to be like, okay, well, we're not going to do this because of a challenge or something. Like that's not how it is. It's more so like if it fits what we're trying to accomplish, then it's just gonna we're more apt to just spend the time doing it. Um, that's kind of really what it breaks down to.
Well, you had actually mentioned with again that there is the alternative that obviously Jagex still offers the vanilla client. There's still RuneLite available. and wanting to eliminate having to like switch between any of the available options.
Mhm.
Uh, so here's a big question that I'm not sure if you guys will know the answer to, because I know this is a bit of a complicated one. But a lot of people are wondering, when is HDOS going to get added to the Jagex launcher?
Mhm. Well, we don't have currently a plan for that at the moment, but something that we're looking into or talking with, and kind of can't really um, necessarily comment on it too much. But we, of course, like having HDOS and supported officially in the launcher would be nice.
There is discussions, but an exact time date of when it would happen is unknown at this
Uh,
point.
is there anything that, like, let's say if Jagex was to give the green light tomorrow, is it
Mhm.
more of a thing of they kind of just implement it themselves after having been given the client, or is there additional work for you guys to do to potentially make it compatible with the Jagex launcher?
It would be very little work to make it support the Jagex launcher. Um, just like
So,
with
we're ju-
Bird
so,
Knight.
so, so to reiterate, we are basically waiting on Jagex.
Um,
To any
ye-
potential JMods listen, just to reiterate
Oh my
and make
goodness.
sure, the reason HGOS is not on the Jagex launcher is because of Jagex. Am I hearing that correctly?
I wouldn't
uh,
say it's just like, I wouldn't say that. Like, it's just like things take time to discuss, and then like
mhm.
internal discussion within like a company, for example, like a multi-million dollar company takes a long time. There's a lot of hands in the sand. So I don't think it's like one person or one group of people you could probably pin it on. So
Yeah, priorities. We understand it just takes time, but at least they're having a discussion with us. But they can't promise when it will happen. It's a uh, but from knowing that if they said yes, we could be ready for it if they just said yes.
mhm. Yeah,
Like
Yeah.
as to,
we're capable to just, or we know what's required
Mhm.
to get it in there. And so yeah, if and when the time comes, then you'll see it there, I guess you could say.
100%.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely.
Um,
That does. I mean, for I mean, it's so frustrating because again, around the time that I came along was when, like, how many, like, before the approval of the client, I
mhm.
would describe the methods of communication or the lack thereof from Jagex to almost have been a cold shoulder. And it seems that like it's better now. And
Mhm.
again, like being on the official approved client list and everything like that's great. But it does seem to be a bit harder to not to directly contact them, but to, as Pat said, and I do understand how a corporation works, and that there's an entire heart or hierarchy of command that they have to work through. Uh, but it does take time to really get things to that point, huh?
I think as we build personal relationships with people, like, we probably haven't proven ourselves fully to them, and I guess there's like a relationship thing. Like right now, it's very formal sort of business and like just discussion about certain things. But
Mhm.
at the end of the day, you end up building friendships, and you're able to get contacts and discuss more openly with people over time. So I think we're kind of in that phase where we're just like starting to build the connect. We're grateful for the position that we're in, to be honest. Like, to even be on the approved client list, like we're not people that are going to ask for more. That essentially lets us do,
Mhm.
let it gives us the power to just like put it put it out there for people. And while it would be nice to have the additional support with whatever means that would be available, like ultimately, like HDOS is gonna win no matter what. Like we're gonna do what we can do, and
we had a mission since day one of what we wanted to do with this client, and we're just happy that we can actually achieve our goal with it without anybody getting in the way. We're not going to be shut down, and at least now that people are trusting us more, that we're good guys with good intentions, and we're not going to steal their account, and that we're just a bunch of passionate people who want to share our passion with other people. That's what we're about. And I think over time, people will realize that more, and they will. Yeah, I'm just mostly glad that we're not shut down. like Bat was saying.
Yeah, like you can't really beggars can't be choosers, you know what I mean? Like we are
Pretty much.
lucky to, given the stance they took on every other third party client, like basically said RuneLight and HDOS, you're good. And like the fact that we were one of those two, despite the fact that we only had maybe 50 active players at the time, or that are on at any given point, it means to us that they see potential, and they want to see what we can do, or they want to continue to see what's growing here. And to us, that's enough. Like what else really more could we ask for than just the blessing to continue?
Oh yeah, we have a lot of work to do, and things can only get better, and things have only gotten better. And oh boy, there's a lot to do, and a lot of big plans. And I think once the vision of the client is fully realized, it should be hopefully a masterpiece. And restoring an entire MMO is not an easy task. Still plenty of bugs and imperfections that we need to iron out. And slowly but surely, I think we're getting closer and closer to a more perfect and useful client for everybody to enjoy. And we're kind of getting sidetracked with plugins, because that wasn't really a part of the mission in the first place. It was just purely restore 2008. Boom.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're kind of having to do do plugins. So
plugins doesn't really help as much as plugins are going to help the people doing Tombs of a Masket or Theater of Blood. The same time, there's still bugs within that area that we'd like to just be addressing instead.
Right.
So
exactly.
And so even if you have your plugin, you're still going to have to deal with some bugs until we get to that. So it's just one of those things, I guess, but everything eventually will get done. It's just a matter of time. And
yeah, I mean, I want people to actually I need people to understand this. I don't even want them. I need them to understand how small of a team you guys are, and still the sheer amount of work that has again, at least in the it's been about a year since I've been able to witness what's been going on. But for as small of a team as it is, it is phenomenal. I mean, Brian, you had used the word masterpiece to describe this client. I would actually say that at this point, because gosh, I remember the first time I logged into HDOS, it was probably October of 2020, or no, probably 2021. And it was I was in the Grand Exchange. It was 15 FPS. None of the items that I'm looking at right now on the stream were even restored yet or anything like that. So for the small development team that's here, and the distance that you guys have gone is, I mean, for me, it is still underappreciated, I think, for a lot of people. Because again, you see people ask, wow, where's the quest help? Or wow, where's this? Where's that? Where's the other? When realistically, the people that are working on this client are in almost all of their free time that are available, with a lot of us even having in real life responsibilities. It's it's been phenomenal, the amount of dedication, and it's, as you guys have said, now it's finally coming to fruition.
Yeah, one thing, like, we never really cared about necessarily appreciation, though. It's like either way, we were gonna do it. And so the fact that we can do it and share it without it being worried and like have the users on it is like that's the appreciation. If someone comes in and even tries it, like I feel like that's appreciation. Like it's the people who won't try it where that's kind of like where we get a little bit like salty. Like we're like, okay, well, I get it if it's not your thing, but like, don't hate too much unless you log in and at least give it a chance. So
I try to tell people one of the best payments that can be given to you guys, because I've seen it firsthand, especially in the HDOS Discord. But for first time users of the client that have like not really even seen much image or video or anything of it yet, and to log in and to the amount of times I've heard like a reaction of like, whoa, this is cool. Or like just going through like again things that they didn't even think were possible. It doesn't matter if it's like the sexy little RS3 particle loop beams. Doesn't matter if it's the render distance, the fully remastered maps, or anything like that. To hear people's excitement and rather like to at some points their surprise that the game that they love can actually look this good. At least in my eyes, that's usually where I get really excited when people actually realize that.
Oh, exactly. I mean, the whole point is for other people to enjoy it. Like our passion is what we want to reflect other people to enjoy and share. And when you pour so much like yourself, your blood, sweat, and tears into something, and then other people can realize and appreciate it and find enjoyment in the very things that you make or that you strive for, it's that's all we need. And yeah, I remember like Matt. I just asked Matt like, "Hey, you want open beta? Go in here." The only thing I require is you go on stream and show me your first experience. So tell me what you think. He's like, "Yeah." That it's the little things really that mean a lot to us, and also why we kind of get like take it personally when people uh just strike things off and not really give things a fair shot or don't.
This is your baby. Like
Yeah.
this project, yeah, it is literally to watch it have grown and to again, the large amount of allure to me with this project was the love that was put into it. I know that sounds cheesy. I know that might sound cringe, but you can see in different facets of life when there is passion and love put into something. And that's what I've seen here because it's, as you said, it's for the people that you want to or have experienced those same emotions that you were talking about.
hmm And it makes us excited, like doing it ourselves and knowing that this is really cool stuff and the nostalgia factor too. But doing what we enjoy is a very satisfying thing. Like Pat was alluding to before, like I mean, we could be working a corporate 9 to 5 job, and I know personally that that would probably be very degrading, and you can't really pour your passion, love into something that it's hard to find a job that you can feel passionate towards, and being able to work on the client is our outlet towards, uh, I guess, pouring our artistic sides into something and having something to strive for or something to um what's an analogy? Do you have any analogies, Pat? You're better at analogies. Um it's oh,
fulfillment, I guess.
exactly.
Like it's really like what you what you do just fulfills like or what you like. If you do what you like, then that's how you'll be fulfilled. So like if you like to work a lot, like maybe people out there that really like working. So maybe that 9 to 5 or whatever might actually fulfill them. But for us, like what it was is just working on a project that brings happiness to other people, and that is fulfilling enough for us. And it's kind of what drives the work ethic that's required sometimes for that, even though some people might not understand why you would pour in a bunch of effort and time into something that's not actually like growing your monetary worth, or not actually growing your
Why are you working on a 2000s Java cookie clicker that was made like 20 years ago, basically, of like all the things you could be doing? But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, that was one of the other reasons I really respected you guys, was like seeing how intelligent and knowledgeable you guys were with the work that you do, and this is what you chose to do with it. Like that was it was something where it really stood out to me, where it's like these guys truly do believe in like what they're doing. That again, there's so many different projects, not just RuneScape related, but in so many different areas of, I guess you can maybe call not fresh starts. I'm thinking of fresh start worlds with startup companies and stuff like that. A lot of the motive, a lot of the goal is some sort of monetary value, some sort of revenue, some sort of metric like that they can measure in terms of success. But that wasn't it for HDOS, and I think just literally you guys loving this for, again, you guys have probably played RuneScape growing up ever since you guys were kids, as do many of the people maybe listening and stuff like that, to where that's the motive to just fully immerse people in stuff that, again, like this client, and I'm sure many other people, it reignited my love for this game. Like I enjoyed it. I would play it, and it was nice to like kill time on it, and I had friends that would play it and stuff like that. But it wasn't until logging into HDOS, especially with like a lot of the areas that are like fully restored, all the new sounds and everything like that, and I'm like, wow, I forgot that I'm playing an MMO. This is crazy.
Yeah, definitely. No, it is nice. It is nice that, you're one example of like maybe an extreme example of somebody who really appreciates and kind of gets the
I
point
love
of,
HDOS.
yeah,
Yeah.
like
I love it so much.
and we appreciate that completely. And like we also
That's good.
understand not everybody's going to be that way. But like just, you know, it does
Mm-hmm.
have other benefits too. Like it does have like the performance. All of the plugins that we do are going to be, working, and hopefully like maybe like a new outlook on it, or a new perspective of what the plugin, why are people using this plugin? Um, what is the actual, like, sure, it does this need, but like why do they need that? And maybe we're looking into like specifics about how to improve those parts of when we add the plugin. It's not just adding it, it's really thinking about why it's there in the first place. And we do, when I talk about it, like I just, we take it seriously. Like we really do take every bit of this as if it was something that we were building to be paid for, or something that we were building to present. And it really is a presentation. It's we want
Mm-hmm.
what we do to be shown off, and to be shown off in the best way it can be. So that's really all there is doing what
And
we love and doing it the best we can.
like Remy's reaction there is like pretty much all it was for. Even if we just have a few people who really follow us or enjoy what we do, and that's really enough. Like honestly, like the few people who've been here since the beginning and like really love what we do is who we do it for.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's pretty touching to think that we could be followed in that way, and that we could be people that others can, I guess, aspire and follow.
Rally around, and yeah, I really appreciate.
We're on a mission, boys.
Mm-hmm.
It's going pretty successful so far, though.
Yeah.
Even thinking way back, brain, it's like if not for Superman, like if
Oh
not for
yeah.
when we were coming into the alpha phases and we needed somebody trustworthy to like actually play on it and
Oh,
like
100%.
help us, like it really started with that as far as like where it's actually playable for other people, like not just like an engine project or something to work on. It's like, oh, now actually people are really using it, like it actually really will work. And like Super's passion for playing on it and being such like a loyal tester, loyal friend with that is like, yeah, it's like really started there. And that's probably where the, I guess, like the adrenaline from other people's enjoyment just started with that. It's like, holy crap, the people really like playing on this.
Oh yeah, this project wouldn't have been possible without Super. It's like, though, like that's why it would have been possible to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And though I think I could do everything myself, I kind of realized like, hey, you can't. And really, it's a team effort, and one person can't do everything good. One person can't do everything, and I know there's a lot of aspects that we probably fall short on, and that we wish we could do more. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just grateful for what we have and the people around us.
Definitely.
And wouldn't have been possible without Super for sure. And the mods who keep our chat, and then like our team is growing us too. Now Remy and Lay is part of the team, Reb, and hopefully if discussions go well with Jagex, hopefully we can open things up to let everybody contribute towards helping remaster things. That'd be great. And then we can finally open up to the community. And oh yeah, that was another aspect that I think I don't know if we talked about that why we're not open source.
True.
Was the security aspect too. But I think we already talked about why we're not.
Yeah, we
Malicious
have
intent.
a lot of like posts in our Discord. That was a question for a long time. It's like, why not just open source it and get people involved and helping?
Yeah.
It's like, yes, that would be great. Like we would love just people to just who wanted to just start helping, but it's just not something that we can do, that we could, it's just not easy to accomplish that while, because
Being responsible.
yeah, we have to be responsible with something that's really a gift that we're even allowed to use and do at all. So
Mm-hmm.
that's true.
Thanks.
And I have found this too. You think about Remy, you think about Matthew 4, Tom, the people who want to be involved and really are in this, like the passion. And I'm not saying there's not more of these people, but
Mm-hmm.
actually the list goes on. But the
Yeah.
people who are getting involved, a couple more are RS Orchestrated or Dem Hunter. There's just a lot of people who have just come along and just like put forth that extra effort to find a way to be involved and find a way to contribute, even though we don't necessarily open the doors. Hey, everybody, come on and contribute. There have been many people who have definitely lended their hand, and we appreciate all those people.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are so nice. I mean, that was a lot of for the most part, basically a lot of the questions that I went through. That was just about it. And like you said, with more people that are showing their passion and wanting to get involved and contribute, like it's only been uphill for like quite some time, and it's only going to start accelerating more and more, and it's so awesome.
Yeah, I feel the pace has been picking up too, especially with Leyline's work, and now everybody's more contributing, and things are actually going like pretty well. They're getting into a groove, and I think once plugins are finally like done, it'd be like a shackle off our legs, and we can finally just focus back on the things that matter. Yeah, if I never had to touch plugins again, I'll be grateful.
Exactly. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if you started like crying tears of joy one day when we're done with plugins, just streaming down the face of thank God it's over.
Plugins are so boring compared to what could be. It was like I'd rather spend time on the things that the project is meant for than plugins. Because it's like you're making like something that already exists and already is expected that people know what it's going to do, and it's not really fun just like reinventing the wheel. And what's fun is making something new and solving new problems, and I guess delivering something that people haven't experienced before. Or it, I don't know. For me personally, plugins are just really boring, kind of dreadful to do. But the fun aspect is, I guess, trying to put a twist on them and trying to re-envision them and put them into a more fitting light that can work with the client.
I think part of the thing that's like so, I think it's just how they've been presented to this point. Like, so we see what the plugin does, and we're like, really, we don't want that, and we don't even want that. Like, that doesn't seem nice. But when we're finally done doing it, we're like, oh, that's kind of nice because we evolve the plugin and we make it into our own. And but until we see it in our version, like it's hard to get excited about. I definitely agree.
Oh yeah, it's like kind of dreadful because it's like pouring all your artistic and creative thinking into a plugin, and I wish we could just pour it into other things that are, I guess, personally more important, like the lighting model. I'm pretty sure that's gonna be a banger, and I wish I could be just working on that right now instead of Bing tags. But very desperately trying to stay disciplined and work on things that are priorities and not just what I want to do. So yeah, I can't wait for plugins to be done with, and we can work on more fun, exciting things for us.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that we can't do it; it's just more so. It just, I guess, takes time and
it's been done before, right? So it's like it's not like we're creating something. It's like we're recreating like something, or like we're not really. I don't know. There's an alternative that's people are using and are used to, and so it's also like stressful to be like, oh, is this going to be what people need and want and all of that stuff. So and another set of bugs, another set of things. So it's just a little bit of a daunting task as well, just to get them all. But once they're done, they're done. So that's kind of what we look to. But just to transition a bit, I did have Super wanted to know basically how you guys are liking the podcast, or if this is something that you'd like to see more regularly, or something that how often how how often would you guys like it, and how do you like this format? Because we're open to hearing from the community.
Yeah, this is our first one. It's kind of turned more like a QA, and we're like just dumping our feelings and thoughts. So let me imagine we just be casual talking about stuff we did or anything you want to know about us personally. Right?
Yeah, honestly, I could see us doing more. Like, it's cozy too, because part of the other reason why I've loved contributing towards this project is because I love all of you. You guys are so cool. Like, there are so many of the people that I've gotten to meet because of HDOS. It's like, I don't know. I haven't really been involved in a RuneScape community in a good number of years, but it feels really nice.
Yeah, the people I met from this project is it's the journey, not the destination, more so. And that's why, like, despite like the bumps in the road, it always just kept due north.
Absolutely. Well, is there? I know Super was yelling at me like 20 minutes ago to wrap it up and get ready to work.
Yeah, sorry,
So
Silver.
Sorry, Super. Is there anything from the either two of you that you would like to say before perhaps we sign off?
HDOS good.
I literally was HDOS good. Yep.
So that was good.
Very good.
Yep. Okay. So thank you so much for tuning in. So we will go ahead and wrap this up. If you guys want to support us, I'll just go ahead and post a link in the chat for our Patreon, and that would be much appreciated. Until then, we will see you guys next time.
Oh.
Nice.
Toodles.
Bye, guys.
Toodles.
Toodles. Bye, guys.